special welcome to our listeners from VOP USA Radio. We're so pleased you'll join us uh, early on a Tuesday morning. Well, as you probably know, it's crunch time. We are T minus 3 weeks to the end of session and counting, and a lot's happening. And this is about the time where the dirty tricks start coming out of the woodworks. So keep your head on a swivel, folks. If you see anything that doesn't look right, reach out to us. Keeping the legislature in check is a team sport. Joining us today is someone from the legislature who is a strong defender of the Constitution, someone who truly represents his constituents and is a bright light uh, among our legislators. Representative Chuck Owen, it's so great to have you with us this morning. And we will get to the conversation shortly. And you don't see Chris on the screen because he is in motion trying to get to the legislature to testify. So y'all just bear with us this morning. We're still going to have a great show. Okay, the scripture of the day is Psalm chapter 34, verses 6 through 7. And it says, "When I had nothing, desperate and defeated, I cried out to the Lord and he heard me, bringing his miracle deliverance when I needed it most. The angel of the Lord stooped down to listen as I prayed, encircling me, empowering me, and showing me how to escape. He will do this for everyone who fears God." And I was listening, I don't know if y'all caught it, but General Steve Quast did an amazing interview with Sean Ryan. If you want your mind to be blown about what's happening in space, you should listen to that. But one thing he talked about was the fact that God's given us a brain, right? And he's given us the ability to think through some things and to innovate. And even though he has given us that, we can still reach the end of ourselves, right? Even we can reach the end of our human ability and understanding. And for some of us, and myself, namely, that happens pretty regularly. So there are situations that we find ourselves in that require divine wisdom and divine intervention. And even though, our life should be a constant prayer to the Lord, our life should be living as entwined as one with the Lord. But sometimes we hit those moments where you're like, Lord, you have to show up. You have to give me wisdom. You have to give me a strategy, or else I'm not going to make it out of this situation. Um, but when we do that, King David reminds us that he will help us. So don't give up when your situation looks impossible. Call on the Lord. He's so faithful to help us in our time of need.
Amen.
You know what, Danielle, as you were saying that, as we were praying that, and you talk about coming to the end of your human capacity, it really, at least in my own experience, that's the only time that God really can get through to me, is when I have gotten to the end of my own capacity. And it reminds me of the great words that Robert F. Kennedy said when he was quoting the great Greek dramatist Aeschylus. He said that pain and desperation fall like drops of blood upon the human heart until, in our total desperation and even against our own will, finally comes wisdom through the awesome grace of God. And so I think truly it is, we have to get to the end of our rope at times before we are open to God's grace. And I think that's what you're describing so well this morning.
Yeah, indeed. And Chris, there's a lot of pieces of legislation that we could use some divine intervention and divine insight on as well, because there are
You
some
say
things
that again.
going on at the Capitol that even stand to surprise us, which is remarkable because we're
Yeah,
we're about as salty as it gets.
we are as salty as it gets, and but someone who is just doing such a wonderful job standing up for the citizens so prominently and faithfully is Representative Chuck Owen, who's
Yeah.
been on our show before. And Chuck, thank you for joining us for a few minutes this morning. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys. I'm sorry I've been hard to find, but I'm glad this worked out. Thank you.
You've
Yeah,
been in the midst of where you need to be, so we get it. We get it. But thanks for taking the time with us.
absolutely.
I have not been malingering, I can assure you.
Chuck, let's I am I know we only have 15 or 20 minutes this morning, and then we'll be heading off confidently in 500 directions at once. But I wanted to ask you first off, just your brief reflections on the carbon capture sequestration. And now that you had a couple, I guess, a few days or a couple of weeks to reflect upon that, what are your thoughts on the carbon capture sequestration, the posture of the legislature on it, and what does this mean for the state going forward?
My frank thoughts are this. I cannot believe that this Republican state, this very conservative, pro-business Republican state, has fallen in to become a tool of left-wing European climate ideologists.
Yeah.
That's what carbon sequestration is. Look, capturing carbon and using it in industry is not new. They do it in enhanced oil recovery. We do it in food products. But we have been sold a bill of goods. Neither one of y'all are old enough to remember Hattie Call. I'm not even old enough, but there was a scam back in the 50s where this elixir was sold in Louisiana called Hattie Call, and it was really just booze. And it was a state senator sold this stuff as the cure for everything that made you feel bad. And that's kind of where I feel like we are today with carbon sequestration. We have been told that the world market demands us to capture and bury carbon under our feet. And that is an absolute untruth. And for us to subjugate ourselves to the whims of Europe is just bewildering to me. And look, I have several bins that have me concerned with this. That's the macro level bin about what the state's doing. Where I live, and the one that concerns me most, I live in Vernon Parish, which is the home of what used to be called Fort Polk. It occupies 250,000 acres of land, which my citizens willingly gave up to the Army 80 years ago. Lost a lot of family land and farms and stuff. But they're wanting to put these things in close proximity to the bombing ranges at Fort Polk. They are begging for trouble. They are begging for an ecological or an environmental disaster. And we're running so fast, I can't slow them down. And so I have a multifaceted set of concerns with this.
And it's remarkable how people who have seemed so concerned by the science in previous moments, right? The quote unquote science. The science eludes them. The science is all climate science and it's not real science. It's junk science. I was so proud to see that President Trump signed an EO this past week, I believe, calling for a return to the gold standard of science and reminding America what science actually is, which does involve, the scientific method, which does involve, like a true placebo, for instance, all right. I haven't had enough coffee to get my whole science mind together, but you know what I'm saying. It's completely ridiculous. And on your other point, I just wanted to mention when we were, if we would have known we were absolutely locked in for having you this morning, I was going to name the episode because of what you just said. With Republicans like these, who needs Democrats? Because that's exactly what's happening in our legislature. The Republicans have completely let us down, and I don't understand who's pulling the strings.
To me, as I observe this, and I have these people who are colleagues and smart people, and I get along with, and we always work together. But where I live is in the abstract to them. They don't know where it is. And so it is personal to me, but it's abstract to them. And so when I try to explain to them the reality of what is coming, the reality of what might be, it's like talking in another language. And the other thing about this Republican state has done is we have people inside of economic development who are proliferating the myth that if one parish or two parishes or three parishes say they don't want carbon wells, then we'll lose the Meta Center in Richland Parish, or we'll lose the blue ammonia plant, or we'll lose the Hyundai plant. They can't show me a piece of paper that says that, but they throw that scare tactic out because they are running as fast as they can to get this easy money on the ground that Joe Biden has given them. Look, I
Yeah.
am just, since we're praying people here, y'all pray that this gets revealed to President Trump, to EPA Secretary Zeldin, that this is a fraud. It is a waste of money. And
Yeah.
the old people tell me all the time, Danielle and Chris, they would not be doing this if it weren't for the free money from these 45Q tax credits, because there's no worldwide demand for this. This is a fraud.
Exactly. We just had
And yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
Sorry, Chris. We just had Representative Carla Lims from South Dakota on the show on Thursday. She's running for lieutenant governor, and she was kind of the tip of the spear, along with a number of others, to get eminent domain for carbon capture, at least the private aspect of it, killed in South Dakota. And she was talking about the insidiousness of these 45Q tax credits. Have you heard? I guess my question on that is, has the money is already flowing in that way? If they put an end to the 45Q tax credits like today, would do you think that would dry up any future, that would dry up the opposition to some of these bills? It would dry up the industry's push on this, or
They,
what would that
they
exactly
would look
mean?
another direction and go find something else to do,
Yeah.
because they are perpetrating lies.
Yeah.
A few minutes ago, I
Yeah,
said falsehoods. These are absolute lies, that there's a market demand for this. There is no market demand. And the oil business needs to work around supply and demand. They are chasing a government induced demand,
Yeah.
which is
yes,
free money.
that is so true.
That's it.
So true. And Chuck, it's interesting that the original justification for carbon capture sequestration in Louisiana was because it's an environmental good, and therefore it's good for the environment. It's needed for the environment, and that's what they use to justify eminent domain. However, when you really think about it, I did not hear one argument in committee at all from the proponents of carbon capture sequestration that really talked about the environment anymore. It was, even they know that that it's built upon a fraud, but they talked about jobs, and they talked about a number of other things about it, and it really is. I couldn't agree with you more. Are you familiar at all with what is going on the federal level with regard to these 45Q tax credits? Representative Lims from South Dakota suggested that if those are pulled out, then the whole edifice collapses.
Yes, I am familiar, but I was disappointed that they're still sitting in there in the bill that's now in the Senate. They're not all the way pulled out,
They're not
apparently,
pulled out. Okay.
because so much money has been committed. Even conservative Republicans who we know, love, and trust, and would take a knife for, are doing this because of the money. And that's what hurts me. I don't say it hurts me, but it bewilders me, because it is fake science. It is not sound economics, and it's really potentially dangerous. Look, they are heading towards an ecological problem if they put this in the ground where I live, and in other parts of the state where they don't have access to the subsurface. They
Yeah.
they are playing with the lives of many thousands of people, and
Yeah.
it's just it has got to be called out. It has got to be spoken of. And the oil people came to the table a couple of weeks ago, and they started talking about how carbon sequestration is part of our overall energy strategy. And I asked the guy, I said, what energy is created here?
Yeah.
This is not energy. This is waste. You are capturing waste and burying it. DEQ should be in charge of this, not natural resources. And they stare at me
Amen.
like, oh, there he goes again. Oh, he's lying. I'm not lying.
Yeah,
And
you're not lying at all.
and there's no value, right? There's absolutely no value that's coming from, there's no product at the end. That's one of the things that we've been just hammering. You can't treat this as if it's a commodity, because there is no product. There is no value to the end user. There is no end user.
There could be, if they put some of this in caverns where there are trap spaces. I guess the cavern's the wrong word. They keep telling me to use the wrong word. But when this was sold to us in 2020 to help the oil industry, they said, we're going to go put these in depleted oil fields, and it's going to store there, and then we're going to use it for enhanced oil recovery, which is what's done. But my part of the state, there are no trap spaces, none. They're going to put this in the ground, and they're not going to know where it goes.
That's so
And
crazy.
it is dangerous and it's stupid all at the same time.
It is
Yeah,
dangerous, stupid, and expensive. It's expensive
Yes.
with our money, right?
And,
It's
and,
an
and
expensive scam at our expense.
let me say something else.
yeah,
Most of your viewers will not know, but I'm going to say this every time I get a chance. In 1940, the Army needed an installation, and they came to Western Louisiana to Vernon Parish, and they said, "We want to build something called Camp Polk to train our soldiers for the impending war in Europe. Fascism is on the rise." They knocked on the homes of 800 of my citizens. I wasn't around then, obviously. I look 80, but I'm not. They displaced 2,500 people, over 350 different surnames. A lot of them were families. They left crops in the fields. They left animals in the fields. They gave them 30 to 60 days to get out of their homes for a greater good. You know, right, Christopher? The Fifth Amendment's always been with us. Eminent domain is for a greater good. But now they're coming back and they're saying, they're threatening these country people again. We're going to use your land whether you like it or not. It is so
yeah,
raw where I live. Y'all can't understand this. And a lot of these people, some of these people are still alive, but their grandchildren and children are alive. And we get together twice a year at Fort Polk. And we're called the
yeah,
Heritage Families because it affected us. And
Yeah.
now they're dismiss us. And so it is economic, it is intellectual to me, but it is also very personal to me.
yeah. And Chuck, the last that is so well put. You know, and I think one of the last bills, if not the last bill, that you authored regarding CCS this session, you were sitting alongside Representative Romero and Representative DeWitt Carrier, and had been reduced to a point where you were simply asking for an exemption for the parishes that the three of y'all represent. And the Republican Municipal and Parochial Affairs Committee could Republicans couldn't see fit to give y'all even that exemption just for those parishes, and I thought that that was absolutely atrocious. And you know, I know you have a collegial relationship with people that you have to work with, and to some degree we do too. But we absolutely intend to make sure that the voters know who the Republicans are by name who caused this to happen, because the consequences are too grave not to, and people have to know what's going on.
If a legislator from St. Tammany or St. Charles or Richland or Lincoln told me they needed to do something and they had the understanding that I do, I wouldn't dream of second guessing them. This wasn't about creating a tax. This
Yeah.
wasn't about doing anything where people would lose representation. This was just about directing our own futures. And we were summarily objected. And so it is. This
Yeah,
is something. Look, this is a praying group. I've had to pray through this. I have had to cry to God, help me know how to manage this moment, Lord,
Yeah.
because it felt very much like a betrayal. And I don't betray people. That's not how I'm wired. I'm not really bright. I get bum rushed and I get bamboozled all the time because I'm kind of slow on the uptake. But I'm not a betrayer. And when I get betrayed, it hurts. But I'm not stopping fighting either. I'm a distance runner. I've been
A-
running since the Ford administration. I'm going to run as long as I have energy.
Amen.
yeah,
And Representative Owen, one conversation that Chris and I have been having, because this is one of my biggest pet peeves with the entire legislature, is the fact that there is a municipal and parochial affairs committee. Because I don't know if we were serious about federalism, that committee would not even exist in the legislature as far as I'm concerned. The monies and the decisions belong with the localities, period, end of story. Is there any, I mean, here we are fighting for one, one shred of something that would be brought before those committees. And so much corruption happens in those committees, by the way, because people come out of the parishes to do their dirty work, and they get their colleagues to sign on to it, wittingly or unwittingly, and then the people at home are left holding the bag with those decisions that got made.
Because Baton
Um,
Rouge knows better.
yeah, Baton Rouge
You don't believe
obviously
it? Just
knows
ask them.
better. Yeah, that's
So
right.
the morning of that hearing, I found a place in law. I forget the exact statute where there are over 220 items that police juries are allowed to decide. And it's literally everything from TV antennas to nuclear waste sites. It's coal yards, it's ditches, everything you can imagine. And so my point was, we have a tradition of local leadership. Let us govern ourselves. and
Yeah.
it fell on deaf ears. It because senior leaders in this state have told the lie that if we're not 100% in with capturing and burying carbon below our feet, then the sky is going to fall.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lie from hell.
And of course, all about the money, as
All
you
about the money.
mentioned so well. But HB 601, Chuck, is Representative Brett Guyman's bill, supposed to be voted on, I believe tomorrow, on the floor. It's the bill that will repeal or severely restrict eminent domain for CCS pipelines. Obviously, I'm sure that you support that. Is there any pulse on the likelihood of passage on that?
It's hard to tell. The other side now has gotten the attention of some advocate groups, in addition to y'all. But as I understand it, the Farm Bureau has spoken up. They're a very powerful lobby. I hope the Louisiana landowners will stand up, although I'm starting to be worried about them. Because the Louisiana landowners fought me, by the way. That's another story.
I know they did. I heard their name in opposition to almost every good CCS bill that was
Forestry
brought.
Association fought me. But eminent domain is a serious thing. And if it's for a public good, you've got to be able to do it. But no one will even have the discussion as to how capturing waste off oil and gas wells is a public good. If you want to go down that path and you want to defend climate ideology, that's your only angle. You want to do that? You want to be a tool of the Green New Deal? Then let's have the debate. But they won't have the debate. They just say
They haven't even had to make the argument. They have not even had to make the argument. You're right. They have not even had to make the argument.
No.
Have we made strides at all on the federal level with cutting off this ESG nonsense? Because I know Vanguard and companies like that are big behind this. And and I know some states have moved. I don't think we've yet been successful, unfortunately, because of the same lobby, to say that at least our public pensions should not be tied to anything except for financial measures. But that's not the case for some of these Chevron, Exxon, BP types. They still are trapped or have allowed themselves to be put in, however you want to talk about it, kind of this Chinese model of social credit scoring when it comes to the
That is
way
so right.
that those major the major financial institutions look at them. Has there been any development on that you're aware of? I haven't seen anything lately.
I have not seen any at the federal level. We tried to have that discussion last year,
Yeah.
and we were shouted down. Myself and Representative Boyer were trying to have that discussion last year. I think Bo has some legislation dealing with it now. But my concern with that, and when I try to articulate this problem with ESG, is like they are using elements of an economy that's not element of an economy to try to make business decisions, and
Yeah.
they are implementing things that do not drive supply and demand, but it's more tied to social activism, and it fails every time.
Yeah.
ESG fails every time it's tried, and we do have to confront that. That's one thing I haven't had a chance to get back to. We
Okay.
have to, though.
It is
It's a fool's errand.
critically important, no question about it. Chuck, before we go, I want to ask you, and Danielle may have a follow up. The post COVID assessment that you sponsored a resolution that we strongly supported, requiring a government assessment of its response to the COVID pandemic, and many of the mistakes and missteps that were made in that response. And have y'all had a brief? You've had a briefing on that fairly recently, right?
Yep. Yeah. Last year, at the end of the session, we sponsored. I did. I wrote a resolution asking for the House to take a look at the actions of government during COVID. So we're 2 years in the rearview mirror. Let's try to take a clinical look at what we did, and let's try to be better next time, or at least less bad, right? Let's be less bad. Yeah. And it got through the House unanimously. It was assigned to the Homeland Security Committee, which makes sense, because if you put it in, because there was more than one area we wanted to talk about. it's health and hospitals, it's education, it's business, and it's
Yeah.
the actions of the executive branch. So we put it in Homeland Security. Chairman Galley put together some hearings. Last September, we had 2 days of really interesting testimony. I think y'all know about that. A lot of those videos are still out there. And we heard a lot of heart-wrenching stories about the misbehavior of government, because the government drove the hospitals to behave poorly.
Yeah.
The government drove hospitals to run doctors off. The government forced these vaccine mandates. The government handed out money so people would take experimental drugs. So we compiled that information over 2 days. We heard from from the Hospitals Association, from the nursing homes, the nurses. We heard from lots of people. We did not get a second set of hearings, so we collected data from K-12 and higher ed. We sent data calls out, and both those entities sent us great reports back. Very thankful. And we sent a data call out to Lobby and NFIB, asking them how their businesses were affected, and they sent some data back. Still waiting to hear back from the archivist, because we're trying to find out what the previous administration did on a lot of different fronts. I don't know that they kept the records they needed to have kept. Specifically, what I was most interested in, and what the committee was interested in, is in 2022, the former governor created a suit to be allowed to be participant in the prosecution of Reverend Spell.
That's
Y'all
right.
may remember this. Whoever wrote that suit up included the name of the then Attorney General against his will. He was not given the chance. He took his name off, but we need to find out who falsified that government document.
Yeah.
That was a falsification of a government. It was either a mistake or a crime. But I'm waiting to find out. The report is final, but there may be an addendum to it when we hear all this information back, because look, tyranny is at our doorstep all the time. And if we don't safeguard all of our liberties all the time, government will grow. John Bell said it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, that took 2 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to guard against tyranny. So Chris, yes, we had the report. It was briefed to the committee. I'll have a brief summary of it to the House today or tomorrow, and the report's public. I'll be glad to send it to y'all if y'all want to see it.
Great. And Representative Owen, what have you heard, or have y'all dug into at all the censorship that came out of the Secretary of State's office at the time? Because that, I feel, is still knocking at our door with some of the things that some of the bills that are trying to be passed right now, namely SB 80 by Senator Miller, that would restrict exit polling to quote unquote bona fide approved journalists through that have to register through the Secretary of State's office. And there are one or two other areas that have caused strong concern, bills related to the elections.
We did not look back at the Secretary of State. You're talking about Secretary Ardoin at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be glad to talk with y'all offline if there's other things we need to look into, because we're kind of empowered to do this. Sheriff Wiley had some of the best comments at all. I don't know if y'all saw on my Facebook page. Sheriff Wiley said that we as legislators need to start acting like activists, and that we need, as we gather information, we need to put it together and send it to authorities.
Beautiful. That's
important. And also, Chuck, the legislature, I think, needs to be reminded of its constitutional responsibility of oversight of the executive. One of the drums that I beat relentlessly is that the legislature does not exist to do the bidding of the executive branch. The legislature exists to exercise vigorous oversight under our constitutional system, and too often it's simply lacking.
Well, this structure that was set up by Huey Long and then Edwin Edwards, we have the most powerful chief executive in the country. Yeah. And when it's a good chief executive, you're okay. When it's a bad chief executive, it's bad. But I think that much power is bad at any time. Like right now with issues, legislators are fearful of crossing the executive branch because you don't want your concrete cut. That's the games we play in Louisiana.
Yeah.
We play those games. We silence people, and that's not healthy. And that's why we're Louisianas, because we have that structure set up, and it needs to go away. I love our governor, but I don't think anyone needs that much power.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Is it Chuck, in order to do that, one of the suggestions that's been made is to eliminate the line item veto.
I think
Are you
wonderful.
in favor of that?
I am. I may bring that myself next year because that is a tool that is wielded. Bobby Jindal was terrible with it. Bobby was awful to people who challenged him, and John Bell was too. You know, I did not say this 3 years ago or 2 years ago when I was one of the 19 that voted against the bad budget, and then we all got punished. John Bell's people were so reckless. They redlined every bit of construction in my home parish. And one of the things they redlined was a pool at the Lions Camp for crippled children.
That's right.
You can't say that word anymore. It's called the Lions Camp now. But for 50 years ago, we have a camp in Vernon Parish where Lions clubs from all over the state bring disabled children to a camp. They had never done capital outlay. One of the Lions clubs in Alexandria put it together. And they wanted to come, and it was their opportunity to help. And it got approved. It got all the way through the budget. But when John Bell's team got so furious at Rodney Shammelhorn and I for not supporting a budget buster, they redlined a pool for disabled children.
Deplorable. I remember it well.
Everything I did, I had my every inclination. I had to step back because when my senator told them they had done that, they went, "Oh God, we can't undo it now." It eventually got done. There were sleights of hands that made it get done. But the fact that they did it,
Yeah.
the fact that they had that kind of authority, it's just that is not good government. That's not healthy government. That's what Louisiana has been rotting with forever. And it needs to end.
Yes. So well said. So well said. Chuck, are there any bills of yours, one or two bills of yours that are pending that you want to talk about currently?
Well, real quickly, we got a couple of things that are going to be first in the nations if we can get them done. We have a foreign adversary registration system going that if you are a lobbyist for any of the 6 bad actor nations the State Department recommends, you're going to have to register with the Board of Ethics. It's first step. No other state's done this at the state level. There's FARA, there's federal agent registration. We're going to do it at the state level. And I did this because the governor's office asked to do it. And I think it's a great idea because, you know, I am deeply concerned about infiltration of bad actors all around us. So that's really important. We've also got a bill that's traveling through. That's going to deal with emergency use authorization. We're going to ask Dr. Abraham to create the rules on how to implement emergency use authorization because the hospitals, the pharmacists, the nursing homes, no one knows how to do it.
Yeah.
And we injected people with all sorts of drugs and treatments and things that were experimental and no one was told it. People died, people got sick, people are still sick. We need to be first in the nation to do that. So keep your fingers crossed for that one.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and hopefully one of the central components of it will be clear and explicit informed consent.
Hmm.
That is the focal point of it is informed consent, right to deny.
Yeah. And Representative Owen, as you're looking at that FARA legislation, we were thinking about maybe a resolution at some point coming forward that would just be a strong reminder to the legislature itself that the voices of the citizens should supersede those of foreigners that come in and testify in committees, because we have seen so many times, especially on some of this, like Senator Valerie Hodges' bill this time, they drop off a busload of Chinese people or, who to come in and lobby or testify against a bill that would disenfranchise illegal immigrants. Come on. The voice of the people is more important. The voice of the taxpayer, of the lawful citizen, should far outweigh a busload of 300 Chinese people.
Well, I wouldn't care where they were from. What I care
Right.
about is I think these people most of them are probably here. They're working hard. They're trying to achieve the American dream. And they have been told lies. They were told lies about what Valerie's bills were doing.
Yeah.
They do that every time. They send these people in there and they say, we're going to hurt everybody up and send them home. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with closing your business.
Right.
It has nothing to do with someone from a bad actor country coming here and purchasing land. It had nothing to do with citizens who are here with green cards,
right,
who are trying to create the American That's what we're for. But these people get lied to, and someone is behind these bus trips.
Yeah,
So yes,
someone
I'm
is.
Yeah.
all in.
And Chuck, and to what extent, I know you mentioned, they're here on green cards, they're trying to work hard and, and that sort of thing. But to what extent, even if they are here on a green card, to what extent, particularly with respect to the real totalitarian regimes like China and Iran, to what extent are they still controlled nonetheless by their own governments?
That's an unknown. Anything I would tell you there would be speculative and outdated. I gave up my security
Okay.
clearance 4 years ago, and so I've been debriefed and forgot everything I knew for the last 40 years officially. But I would tell you, as Joe Bag of Donuts citizen, no chance at all the People's Republic of China nor the Islamic State of Iran will send someone over here who's not reliable.
Yeah.
They're not going to send a Patrick Henry over here. They may send someone who feels that way about their country. They are here ostensibly to do research or here to do work, but they are people who have been coded as reliable, or their governments are prisons. They don't let people out of the prison to come to a place like this for no reason. So, as Forrest Gump says, that's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah. Representative Chuck Owen, the one and only. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you down there shortly at the Capitol.
If I'm asleep, wake me up.
Yes,
You
sir.
will. Thank you so much for joining us.
God bless y'all. Bye-bye.
God bless you. All right, Chris. Well, we got a lot to run through, so let's just do it quickly. Starting this morning in House Transportation at 10:30 is Senator Valerie Hodges' SB 216. This is her bill that would discourage delays and incentivize the early completion of road construction projects. We haven't seen it have too many headwinds just yet. I think people are on board, as we've said. Everyone in the state understands the dire situation of our roads, but that will be heard in House Transportation. So it's nearing the end of the line here.
Yeah, and hopefully it will pass through without difficulty. As we've mentioned before, Danielle, if there's one thing that both Democrats and Republicans can agree on in the state of Louisiana, it's that, the DOTD needs reformation, particularly with respect to its efficiency and timely completion of state road projects. It is truly in desperate need of reform. And so I think that this should be it should go through without too much controversy. Hopefully it will, because it is sorely needed.
Yeah, it is sorely needed, and that one is being carried over on the House side by Representative Kelly Dickerson Hennessy. So we should, I think I'm sure it'll have a good hearing this morning. Next up is in House Civil Law this morning at 11. Senator Jay Morris's SB 39 is going to be heard. This is the one about initially the bill was trying to make it so that the state would not be held liable for holding people past their out date when they've completed their sentence in jail. It's been, you said it got pretty hammered in committee on the Senate side, and there's been some amendments made to it, so it's not quite as horrible as it was before.
Yeah, at a minimum, it's unnecessary, Danielle, because there's already a process in place that allows inmates who are aggrieved because they've been held past their out date to seek redress, to seek relief for that. And it's not an easy process for them to go through.
Yeah.
And so it's certainly, even though the bill is not as deplorable as it was in its original form, anything that makes that process more difficult, we oppose. We opposed it in the Senate committee, and we're opposing it now as well. The solution to the problem, Danielle, the solution to the problem is for the Department of Corrections to check its systems and make sure that it's properly calculating the out dates of people who have been in prison, and not make it more difficult for people who are aggrieved by no fault of their own to seek redress and to get relief. That's not the solution.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ridiculous proposal. And I think it just, it was a head scratcher to me from the beginning.
Yeah, and that's SB 39, and we'll continue to monitor and continue to oppose.
Yep. Okay. Now, SB 80, let's see, this scheduled for House floor debate today is SB 80. This is the one by Senator Greg Miller. I just mentioned it with Representative Chuck Owen. This is related to exit polling. This is where Secretary Landry is pulling the strings behind the scenes, trying to censor people who simply want answers, who simply are seeking responses to people's experience inside of their polling place.
Yes, a direct assault on core free speech rights, on core rights of association, when the state simply has not made the case that it has a compelling interest in restricting freedom this way, and certainly is not tailoring the restriction in the very narrow way that the Constitution requires. This is a horrible piece of legislation that we've been vigorously opposing, and it's bad on its face because it involves a restriction of freedom, but it's what makes it even worse is that the precedent that is being set here.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, it's only about exit polls and I don't do exit polls. That doesn't matter. You're missing the point. It sets a very dangerous precedent whereby the government could engage in further encroachments of freedom and constitutional rights in the future if this is not challenged. That's why it is so important. And that's why we are raising the alarm to officials on this issue.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was very heartened to hear that Representative Owens is open to pursuing what happened in the Secretary of State's office during COVID as well, because we know that they were the chief censorship office of the state of Louisiana, as evidenced by some documents that came out during I think the Twitter files, right, Chris?
Yeah, that's exactly right. No question about it. There's an actual email exchange, one email exchange whereby the Secretary of State reports a citizen to this federal CISA portal for their speech that they engaged in, which was then sent on to the Department of Homeland Security. It is unbelievable that the Secretary of State would have been in any way involved in the policing of constitutional protected speech in Louisiana. And we know for an absolute fact, because we have the emails to prove it, that did occur.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And so it really, I think I was really intrigued, and I'm all on board with an assessment by Chuck Owens' committee on the Secretary of State's response during COVID.
Yeah, and just one last point on that, Chris. I did see that DNI Gabbard came out last week and said that that they are uncovering the names of people who were listed as domestic terrorists for their opposition to some of those issues, whether it was COVID directly, whether it was the vaccine mandates, whether it was masking, whatever it was. They are uncovering that loads and loads of citizens were put on that list. And I know she really cares about that list because she found out that she was on Silent Skies. For I can't remember why they put her on there, but they were upset with something she said.
Yeah, exactly. And it's truly, this kind of encroachment would be just appalling to our founding fathers.
Yeah.
And the ones who gave us the freedom. So, but back to SB 80 for a second. This bill really needs to be opposed. We have a call to action up at lacag.org that can be done, and you can also call 225-342 6945, because this is set for vote in the House side, right, Danielle?
Yeah, it is. Do you happen to know offhand who's carrying that in the House?
I do not know right offhand.
Okay.
But I certainly will find out. And that's after I testify in committee this morning. There are two bills that I'll be focused on exclusively for the rest of the day with regard to reaching out to legislators. One is SB 80 and the other one is HB 206.
Okay. Great. And we'll get to that shortly. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to run through a couple other of these. We've talked a lot about some of these, so we're just going to kind of graze through these really quickly so you can get to the committee hearing, Chris. But SB 117 by Senator Blake Miguez. This is his getting ultra processed foods out of public schools bill. This is up for debate on the House floor today as well. And so is SB 46, Senator Facey's bill to stop geoengineering and weather modification in our state.
Two good bills. One, well, I guess equally important, and hopefully neither one will get tremendous resistance. Although I will tell you, as you know, we're apt to do, Danielle, I will be looking very closely, as will you, at any Republicans who either vote against SB 117 or SB 46 or are absent for those votes.
Yeah.
They demand your presence if you're a Republican, and they demand your favorable vote, both of them.
Well said. All right. There's a couple House bills that are going to be heard on the floor today as well. House Bill 400 by Representative Emily Chenevert. This is the one that returns power to the parents with regard to how their minor children receive medical treatments. That's extremely important. I don't know if you have something you want to mention on that, Chris.
I just want to say that it's critically important that parents are given the express codified right in our statutory law to control those kind of decisions that their minor children make, parents and guardians.
Yeah.
On the idea that in Louisiana it would have ever been the case that they don't have that authority is what's astounding to me. But there's no doubt that this should be passed. And again, we're paying very close attention to any no Republican votes or any absences today.
Yep. And also up today for debate on the House floor is House Bill 457 by Representative Denise Marcel. This is related to solitary confinement, and it makes sure that anyone who is sent to solitary confinement has access to both education materials, and she did include and amend her bill with our request, Chris. So thank you for making that request for religious materials to also be included so people can read the Bible in solitary confinement.
Absolutely, and this is a testament, this bill, to the fact that we do not base our loyalty or disloyalty or support or opposition of a bill, base it on which party is bringing it, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. We're going to look to the Constitution. We're going to look at basic human dignity, and we're going to base our decision on that. And we're happy to support this bill by Democrat Representative Denise Marcel.
Yeah. One in the Senate that's subject to call. This is Senator Duplessis's bill that he's carrying, no doubt, on behalf of Governor Landry. This is to make the Commissioner of Insurance an appointable position, of course, appointed by the governor rather than elected by we the people. We heard from Lieutenant Governor candidate Carla Lims just how important making sure that as many positions in the state are elected as possible and not appointed to disperse accountability and to make sure that they are actually accountable to the people. So we are strongly opposing this, and I hope that it keeps getting placed back on the calendar, Chris.
Yeah, and I want to again reiterate the credit to Senator Thomas Presley, Senator Kirk Talbot, and Senator Adam Bass for standing up on the Senate floor and opposing this legislation, which prompted Royce Duplessis to return it to the calendar. But apparently, he's going to make another run at it. So it's a terrible bill for one fundamental reason, Danielle. The last thing we need to be doing in the state of Louisiana is concentrating more power in the hands of the executive.
Yeah.
And that's what this bill does when our constitutional and political system already gives the executive and the governor inordinate power. We do not need to be going down this path.
Yeah. And Chris, the next bill I'm going to mention is the one that we have all kinds of 5-alarm fire flares going off about right now. It is postured to have final passage in the Senate today. Is it today? I believe today.
I believe it. Yes,
Okay.
It is today.
House Bill 206 by Representative Michael Mellorin. He's obviously carrying this for the Secretary of State. This is a bill that we have had a lot of issues with, but we haven't quite understood exactly what they were trying to get at. This is a bill that I would describe as a bill that says that if the Secretary of State's office does anything illegal, don't worry about it. We're going to go back in hindsight and make it not illegal after the fact. Chris, would you talk about this a little bit more? You obviously understand the legal implications, but I just think what it is an attempt at some legal gymnastics to screw the people.
Yes. What HB 206, Danielle, and the reason why it's so nefarious is that it allows election officials to break the law and then have that law breaking ratified by a joint concurrent resolution with a majority vote of each house to ratify the illegality. And so the bill says, okay, if someone goes out and breaks the law and enters into a consent agreement or any other legal agreement regarding our election system or election procedures, and it's illegal, no, they don't get sued over it. No, they don't get called out on it. No, they don't get told you're breaking the law, you can't do this. No, they go back to the legislature and the legislature ratifies that law breaking and allows them to move forward and go forward with it. And so it doesn't require them to pass a bill under the normal constitutional process to make what they did that was illegal legal. So they're really not curing the illegality. They're just ratifying it, approving it. In the legislature, and we've heard on very good authority from Paul Hurd, because I couldn't figure out, Danielle, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Why are they doing this? And the reason why they're doing it is because we have a reason to believe that in middle or late June, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to vacate Congressman Cleo Fields' congressional seat as a racial gerrymander and say that it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So Representative Cleo Fields, in that case, would no longer be a U.S. congressman after this term is served. So the legislature would then have to go in, convene, and either draw a new district that is constitutional or argue for the district that was in place before this new one came out, which Speaker Mike Johnson said is constitutional and is a good district. But this bill would eliminate that requirement and say that all the legislature has to do, if there's an agreement, a consent agreement entered into with Cleo Fields, with a new seat drawn up that still favors him, they sign that, submit it to the federal court, and they don't have any jurisdiction to do anything about it. So Cleo Fields is assured another term, and the legislature will not have to go in and do anything as far as the messy business of drawing up a new district. That's what's probably going on. This is, I believe, Congressman Cleo Fields' Plan B in collusion with members of our own government, and possibly our Secretary of State, to give him a second term without having to go through the hard work of drawing a district that is actually constitutional.
Chris, when Carla Lims was on, she talked about a referral that South Dakota has the ability to nullify, as citizens, has the ability to nullify bad laws. Now, of course, we want everyone to go and take action at lacag.org. We want you to call your senator and let them know that this is an absolute abomination. This is a slap in the face. This is patently illegal. And of course, we are sitting here asking ourselves, who's pulling the strings on this one? Who owes who what if this is the case, right? Because there are a lot of executive fingers that are implicated in this. There are a lot of legislative fingers that are implicated in this. And to me, it is absolutely obscene, and there's no excuse for it whatsoever. So the people need to stand up and scream. But let's say if this gets passed, what happens, Chris? What recourse do we, the people, have? Do we just have to let everything play out and then sue the government and to find this unconstitutional?
Well, what we would do is probably reach out to William Most and his firm and brief him on the legislation and invite him to file an injunction, invite him to file a suit and argue that the legislation is unconstitutional. And I think that would probably be the way it should be done. But we're not to that point yet. And as you said, Danielle, 225-342-2040. Everybody who's listening to my voice right now needs to call now, this morning, the State Senate Chamber, 225-342-2040, and tell your senator to vote no on HB 206, because it is a terrible piece of legislation, and there's some nefarious shenanigans going on behind this bill.
Yeah, there really are, and I don't know if we could get our hair on fire anymore about this, but and I don't want to belabor it because I know you have to run into a hearing. Chris, there's a couple things coming up on Wednesday that I'll just run through, and maybe you can just reserve comment for the end, and if there's anything else you want to add. House Governmental Affairs on Wednesday will hear SB 8, which is Senator Jay Morris's constitutional amendment to make it easier to fire people in the civil service. Of course, we're very supportive of that. In House Health and Welfare tomorrow, two big bills, very important to us, Senate Bill 2 and Senate Bill 19, both by Senator Mike Facey. The first one would ban fluoride from the water. The second would provide for the dispensation of ivermectin over the counter. Both of those we are very supportive of. Then in House Administration of Criminal Justice, Senate Bill 15 by Jay Morris. This is also on Wednesday. This is 10 o'clock. His bill would prohibit any thwarting of federal immigration enforcement efforts. So I think that one is going to be an important one. We've seen what's been playing out within states to thwart ICE. So this is a strong support for that. Anything you want to mention about those, Chris?
I think you said it all very well, and we will put up updates on both our X page and the LeCag Facebook page, so people should go there and find updates on these bills that we are supporting and following very, very closely.
Great.
And the ones that we are opposing, and our updates on specific items of legislation will include how Republicans voted.
Yeah.
And we're starting to include the parishes that those Republicans represent.
Yeah, absolutely. Two final bills I just want to mention because both of them are very important to us. House Bill 601 by Representative Brett Guyman is expected to be brought tomorrow for House floor debate. And then in Senate Transportation on Thursday, the cockroach is rearing its ugly head, SB 519 by Representative Glorioso. This is the bill that would make it a crime, I guess, to use a handheld cell phone device while operating a vehicle.
Yeah. HB 601 repeals eminent domain for carbon capture sequestration. You're exactly right, Danielle. It'll be heard on the House floor, and the HB 519 Glorioso, the cockroach, which would criminalize talking on a handheld cell phone in your vehicle. That's a terrible bill that we're going to continue to oppose, and hopefully that bill will go down. We don't know for sure. It has more weight this year because it's part of Governor Landry's insurance reform package, which will do nothing to give citizens relief on their insurance. Absolutely nothing. If anything, it could potentially drive people's insurance rates up. So we're not supporting that at all.
Yeah. And it's time for us to hire some legislators, Chris, for us to vote in some legislators who are not going to be proponents of the nanny state, right? I think it's time for these legislators, for the state of Louisiana, to have legislators and executive representation who fly the flag of freedom, who understand the Constitution, who have read the Constitution sometime in the last 5 years. That would be ideal.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that if we ever have an opportunity, I think that we should impose a requirement on every legislator to carry a copy of the Pocket Constitutionalist, just a small little booklet of the Constitution anytime they're on the premises of the legislator. Certainly anytime that they are in doing business down there. They should have to carry a copy of that.
Well, I'd love it if they read it and didn't just use it as a bookmark.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
All right, Chris. Well, I know you are heading off, but thank you so much for representing us at the legislature this morning. Of course, we want everyone to go and take the actions this morning at lacag.org, www.lacag.org. Share today's episode with anyone who needs to get caught up on what's going on at the legislature. And any final words, Chris?
Off we shall go, Danielle, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Okay, sounds good. We'll see you all back here on Thursday at 8.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.